City building has had its ups and downs through video games, but maybe you're interested in the best indie city builders of all time. That's right, city builders that have been made independently, no publishers, or at the very least self-published. And those types of games can often compete with the big AAA blockbusters, but also they can be a bit weird at times, and maybe that's a good thing. Anyway, beginning this list of the best indie city builders of all time, I do want to start with Ostriv. Ostriv is made by a solo developer, and for various obvious reasons, this has been in an early access state for many years, but people do really enjoy it. Ostriv is a somewhat survival resource management city building game, which has been coming along for, I think, over 10 years at this point, and officially it's in alpha. On Steam, it's been in early access, and there's no particular end or release in sight, but at the time of recording, it's got very positive user reviews on Steam. Over 6,000 user reviews at 94% positive. If it gains 1%, it will actually be rated as overwhelmingly positive. You can't get much more indie than Ostriv. Over the years, updates do come relatively regularly. You know, patches, hotfixes, new content, and yeah, this does take a long time, and development is slow and steady. So if you haven't checked it out in like 3 years, it might be worth jumping back into. If you've checked it out recently, I don't know, check back in another 3 years. Ostriv is going to be an ongoing development, but I did want to shout it out here because a lot of people do really love and appreciate Ostriv. It's one of the better indie city builders out there. Banished, the ever-classic indie development that revived the city building genre, and Banished was this indie development that started in 2011 and released in 2014. It was just this chill, but also somewhat challenging city building experience set in a medieval age. It might seem a little more simplistic today, considering where the genre and subgenres have gone, but it is still a favorite. Now in Banished, you are starting as a small settlement of outcasts, building up from nothing, farming crops and surviving harsh winters, as you just grow your city into basically a bustling metropolis. Now, there are a ton of mods for Banished as well, which has kept the game running and quite lively, and it is still one of the more popular city building games that's played today. So this is definitely a good one to get into still, even though it's over a decade old. Sorry to make everyone feel old here, but it is over a decade old, and it still holds up. And then there's Farthest Frontier, another medieval survival city builder, but more modern this time, and it's also another one with very positive user reviews on Steam. This one is by Crate Entertainment, and its early access phase went from about 2022 to 2025. It took a while, but it finally is reaching 1.0 release, so it is now considered a finished game. And it brings a number of things to the table. First of all, visually, it does look pretty good. Having said that, its performance and optimization can be questionable at times, and even on higher-end machines it can get a bit laggy, but at least the fewer frames you get do look nice. But if you've got good performance, then this one has a lot to offer as well. Extensive city building, military combat and defense against outside enemies, crop rotation is one of my favorite things about this game, and it has all the survival city building stuff you want in terms of gathering resources, processing those resources, and keeping your people alive. So there's just a lot of resource management, hunting, fishing, crafting, trading, and battling. It's basically everything you would want from a survival medieval city builder, outside of maybe better performance. But yeah, Farthest Frontier, it was a long time coming and people do enjoy it. It's one of the more played city builders in the world today. I can recommend it, but do check and test its performance first before fully committing to make sure it can run properly on your computer. Then I'm gonna talk about Foundation. This is a gridless medieval city builder which has free-form development, modular monuments, and generally it's chill vibes. So for full transparency, Foundation did sponsor us years ago in the past. I just share that because I think you should know. But also Foundation finally got its full release after a long time in development in 2025. It is very popular. At just under 20,000 user reviews, it is very positively rated at 85% positive. It's got a solid player base, also one of the more played city builders in the world today. That is an impressive title for indie city builders in general. Now, this one does have this more cartoony slash simplistic, maybe quaint graphics to it, which I know some people do actually love. Some people think it's just okay, and a lot of people hate it. But Foundation as a game does bring a lot to the table, particularly when people complain about grids and they don't like building straight roads, they want curved roads. Well, in this one, the paths form organically based on where people walk. You don't even place houses specifically as a location. You zone an area and houses build up in the areas you define, and they crowd up based on development. This one does bring you through various levels of city building, and the modular monuments are a big selling point where when you build a church, for example, you can make it as big or small as you want. The bigger, the better and more bonuses it gives, but also it's going to cost a lot more to build and a lot more time to build. So when it comes to the big constructions, whether it's a church or a castle, it's going to be as big or small as you like. And not many games have that freeform kind of building of the largest structures. That included with the more freeform, sandboxy way of building your city, and Foundation does give you one of the most free-form experiences in city building. So if you hate grids and straight lines, Foundation is where you want to go. Now, if you do like grids, you might find Foundation a little bit fiddly, tedious, annoying because you just want things to line up properly. So it really is a playstyle thing. But Foundation by Polymorph Games, it's an indie city builder, very well reviewed, and it's gotten more popular over time. On the move is the Wandering Village. This is one that we have been keeping an eye on for a long time. It entered early access towards the end of 2022, and it's a moving city builder, which was a big trend for a long time, and it's a little bit less now, but it's still a thing, where your city moves around. And in this case, you are moving around because your city is built on the back of a giant dinosaur-like creature called an onbu. So you are surviving on the back of this creature, but this is a symbiotic relationship. You have to keep the onbu alive, because if the onbu dies, well, your city stops moving, and if your city stops moving, this whole world you're living in this game is pretty much a toxic poison cloud of death and disease, so you kind of have to keep moving. But also, as you keep moving through the world, your city comes across different things. You're moving across this world map, and you're going from biome to biome. So it's not that the weather and the climate changes through the year, the actual biome changes. So when you build up in one biome, you might set things up to be really good in this mountainous biome, but then you go into the next zone and it's a tropical jungle, or you're swimming through an ocean. So you don't always know what you're going to be facing in the future, and you have to prepare your city for various possibilities. Of course, there's events and things you discover along the way as well. And then the onbu can become infected by poisonous plants, which you then have to deal with. So not only you need to survive, you'll be keeping the onbu alive, and you can feed the onbu and influence it. And there's a lot of cool ideas here. It's very well received, 90% positive user reviews on Steam after many thousands of user reviews. People like it, and the 1.0 release is kind of exciting. Now, of course, I'm going to talk about Timberborn, one of the most successful indie city builders of all time from various points of statistics. Now this also, for full transparency, did sponsor me in the past, but everyone knows Timberborn. It's a beaver city builder, which means your citizens are beavers and you are building in a vertical environment with vertical constructions. You can build things on top of each other. So not just the dams to block the water, which by the way, there are fluid water dynamics on Timberborn's maps, which plays into the gameplay very nicely. Obviously, it's a beaver city builder. The vertical construction means even if a map feels a little bit small, you can just build up and up and up. You can build down as well. And there's so much to Timberborn. It's going through early access for a long time with no particular full release in sight, but honestly speaking, Timberborn feels like a finished game that's just getting content updates now. The user reviews on Steam are over 30,000 of them at 95% overwhelmingly positive, and Timberborn is in the top 5 most played city builders in the world today. Calling itself a lumberpunk city builder, where you build vertical architecture, deal with water physics, and terraforming of the landscape, while it's also a survival city builder, but also there's a lot of resource collection and resource processing and manufacturing of goods, plus the various kinds of beavers you can play as. There's a lot to Timberborn. So if you've been waiting for full release for Timberborn, I don't think you have to wait for a full release to jump into this one. It really does feel like a full release already, and it's just getting more and more content. If you are watching this in the future and magically Timberborn has actually fully released into 1.0, I don't know what year it is, but congratulations for making it this far into the future. I don't expect Timberborn to release anytime soon. It's just going to be in early access forever. But it is still one of the best indie city builders of all time. On the topic of survival city builders, I am going to definitely mention Frostpunk. This is a society survival game which brought the survival city building subgenre to the next level. In this one, you are surviving a frozen post-apocalypse, and your city has this central heating pillar that really is playing more on that surviving the winter aspect of survival city builders, but you're also exploring the world. And because it's a frozen apocalypse, it's always winter, but then it gets like harsher and less harsh at times. It is a struggle. Frostpunk also started to bring in societal and ethical gameplay elements with tough decisions that you have to make. So it is somewhat a society manager, which is the direction Frostpunk 2 went more in, where it's less of a city builder and more of a society manager. But Frostpunk 1 is one of the best city builders of all time, just generally speaking. It is still very popularly played today, one of the most played city builders in the world. It's still great. And just as a bonus, this one is getting a semi-pseudo remake in 2027. So if you're watching this video in the future, Frostpunk 1886 will be the superior version of this game, because they're promising 30% totally new content, better graphics, but it's still Frostpunk 1. Frostpunk, great to play today, but if you're closer to 2027, maybe check out the remake. Finally, I want to talk about one game that I don't particularly consider a city building game, but many do, so I'm going to talk about it here. Songs of Six. So after listing games by genre for over a decade, a consistent but not unchanging definition is needed to make sense of any list of games. So one thing I personally hate is looking at a list of games like Skyrim and seeing Dark Souls or Baldur's Gate in there just because they're RPGs. So in a list of city builders, I don't like it when people include games like Civilization or Total War. For city builders, after much lengthy, complex, detailed, and often antagonistic discussions, the genre boils down to 4 main points, which I go over in detail in other videos, but to go over it quickly here. 1, you place houses as whole structures, or at least zoning them to be placed as whole structures. 2, population lives in those houses, so those houses must have people living in them, affected by services, infrastructure, that kind of thing. 3, 30 population is considered small. This is a soft number to separate most colony sims from city builders. And 4, the main camera must be from further away, typically from above. as city builders, the origins come from God games, really. So Songs of Six, when you look at it, it pretty much vibes like Dwarf Fortress, and it's an indie development with overwhelmingly positive user reviews on Steam. It's a very, very good, robust game with a free demo, by the way. But when going through the definition of a city builder, it felt weird. Songs of Six seemed to be hitting the points required to be a city builder technically, but it just didn't feel like a city builder. And I did go into a kind of exploration as to why that was the feeling. So in Songs of Six, when it comes to building houses, there was actually a change in 2022. Before then, in Songs of Six, you tended to build houses by parts, where you place down the structure and then you place down the beds, and you could have this varying kind of residential structures, which basically made it a colony sim. A loose guide is if you place beds, it's a colony sim. If you place houses, it's a city builder. There are exceptions to all of these rules, but in 98% of cases, this sticks and this tracks. So Songs of Six changed it so that instead of placing beds, you do just place houses, because the game intends you to be able to support up to 30,000 population, and placing 30,000 beds would be insane. But the houses, quote, in Songs of Six, are just a collection of beds grouped together for ease. They're not actually placing houses. Other structures in Songs of Six follow the colony sim style. You could place a latrine and you place the individual toilets and sinks. There's no kitchen in the houses that you place. You build separate canteens. And there are no bathrooms in the houses either. You build separate bathhouses. And it's not like placing a bathhouse in Caesar 3 as a whole. You place individual features within the bathhouse. With all of these base survival needs dealt with in other structures, which you do build piece by piece and not as wholes, Songs of Six doesn't really fulfill the criteria of point 1 of placing houses as wholes. And this kind of explains why I felt like Songs of Six was more colony sim than city builder, but it does explain why I don't technically list it as a city builder. However, following these strict definitions can be great for these lists, but it breaks down at the individual level, where the most important thing is, do you find the game that you're looking for? So I don't know whether you individually consider Songs of Six to be a city builder or not. Some do and some don't, but at the end of the day, Songs of Six is a good game where you do build a city, and it does identify itself as a fantasy city builder. So even if it technically, edge case, doesn't really fit the criteria that I have to use as a city building game, if you consider it a city building game, then it is one of the best indie city builders in the world ever. And there you have it. That is a list of a bunch of indie city builders that you should be happy with. But of course, the city building genre is vast. There are many more indie city builders and not indie city builders that would be great to see as well. If you'd like to continue that journey, you can see the best city builders of all time without restrictions linked on screen right now. Or maybe you want to know about the history of city builders and see a bunch more games, you can check those out. Just click the videos on the screen. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel in another way, use the GOG referral link down below to get any game, or support on Patreon to keep us independent. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next video.